Okay, on some days, Captain Rob becomes Maintenance Guy Rob. Today I'm going to do an oil change on my 8.3 liter Cummins QSC diesel engines. There's two of them, the process is exactly the same. First thing I want to do is take the cap off the oil so that the air can flow through. I've also already warmed up the engines. I run them for about 10 minutes to get the oil to a little over 100 degrees so it flows easier. The tools you're going to need: screwdriver, this is my hammer, funnel, and actually I learned from the previous owner of my boat to get your oil in the 2.5 gallon jugs. The beauty of this is you can keep 2 on board that are empty. You're only pouring in 2.5 gallons at a time, and you always have 2 empty ones, so it's really easy. It's a lot more maneuverable to move 2 gallons, 2.5 gallons than a 5-gallon drum, which I've tried. It's definitely harder. But first thing I'm going to do is start with draining my oil filter. To do that, you need to puncture a hole in the bottom. So I have this rubber band on my funnel, and this is going to go straight down into my 2.5 gallon. You can't see it, but I've also got a towel down here on the floor, and an entire roll of paper towel. I mean, you just have it just in case, but I've learned that as clean as I try to be, sometimes I slip some, so having that old towel down just makes it a little easier to clean up, so it's not getting into the bilge water and all that stuff. So first thing we're going to do is puncture a little hole and drain this filter. There it goes. A hammer works better than that. All right, so the reason you want that hole in the middle of the bottom of the filter is because I'm going to start to loosen this to let the air in, to really let this thing drain. And if the hole was on the outside edge, you'd be going all around like this. You want to keep it right in the middle of that funnel. So I'm just going to start loosening this, making sure that my funnel stays where it's supposed to. There we go. Now I can do it by hand. So you'll really, I mean, it takes a lot of turns to loosen this thing off, so just loosen it down a few turns all the way around, and just be able to look in there through the hole into my 2.5 gallon, see how it's draining. We'll let that thing drain out. In the meantime, I'm going to get my pump ready. Hopefully you have this too, because this is the best. I've got a little bucket that I keep mine in. Apparently one time I did not tighten the cap all the way and got a bunch of oil down here. So you want to make sure that you tighten it all the way down, and then it's just good to have that bucket just in case it leaks a little bit. So I've got a bucket down there. So for my application, I need a number 19 wrench and a pair of pliers to loosen this cap off. And I'm just going to stick this right in with my funnel and turn my pump on. Start pumping out. This is the port engine. Open that valve. Let's flip it to drain. Okay, so I finished emptying the port side. I've got the filter off. Just take a paper towel here. Just try to wipe off those rings, make sure that connection, just try to get as much of that dirty old oil out of there as possible. I've already pre-filled my filter. You want to make sure that your gasket here has got some oil on it. The reason you want to pre-fill, this actually holds almost a gallon of oil, so if you pour it in the top and you think that you've filled up the oil to the right level, you check the oil, and then the engine starts running and you realize you're going to be a bunch short because the filter had to fill up yet. All right, I also like to write the date and the engine hours on the filters so I know the last time I changed them. It's just a little thing I do. Tighten it by hand as hard as you can, and you'll see there's some letters on these filters, these fleet guards. You know, if it starts to get tight at one letter, you just turn it to the other letter, 3/4 of a turn, and you're good to go. So, rock and roll. The next thing we have to do is fill up the engine with the oil. Okay, so I poured my 5 gallons into my engine, and now I have 2 empty ones to empty this engine with. While I'm down here in the engine room today, I'm going to change my zincs. I'm in salt water, so I have to have those zincs changed out. So I have my zinc kit, and you also want to check these sea strainers. This is where the water comes in. This is your first filtration system. My generator one actually clogged recently and killed out my impeller, which had to have the whole thing torn apart and cleaned out. So easy thing to do while you're down here. Shut off the sea cocks when the water comes in, clean out the sea strainers. And it's just kind of part of the maintenance I do every 100 hours, just to make sure everything runs nice and smooth. Okay, so I got a little drip of oil on. Just clean that off. I'm going to throw it right back in the box that these came in. And I usually put a garbage bag in that box, because when you put this in your car, you definitely don't want any oil leaking into your trunk or the bed of your truck or anything. So just little things to prevent any oil spillage or leakage into your nicer things. Okay, so I've pumped out the starboard engine. I'm done with my pump out system, so I'm going to clean this out, wipe down the whole hose, and crank this cap back on nice and tight so I don't get any leakage. And then it goes back into my little bucket just in case the little leaks out. Okay, so I've gone through and filled up now my starboard engine. Quick little note, right empty on there. One time I glanced down here thinking I had 5 gallons of oil that I did not have because they were empties waiting to be used. So learn from my mistake. I also have backup diesel just in case you run out there. There's 10 gallons of extra fuel, so always be prepared. All right, I don't know if you can see this or not, but here's how you clean the sea strainers. There's a through hole down here that I'm going to turn off. Don't over force that, because if it breaks, you're in a world of hurt. And if you don't do this regularly, they can get a little gunky. So then you just unscrew these. You'll see a little water seep out, so one side the screw stays on and this side just comes off when it's loose enough. Okay, so the sea strainer is just this little metal thing. As you can see, mine is empty, which is a good sign. So if you aren't strong enough to hand tighten these, just get a pliers, but don't go too crazy. And the final one, right there in front of the screen. This is for the generator. This one was clogged before on mine, so that cost me about $500 to fix. Could have saved that just by doing this when I did my last oil change. All right, let's open these back up. All right, 3 closed and 3 open. Okay, so the final thing left to do on the oil change is check the oil, make sure that, number 1, it looks nice and clean and not all black, and 2, it's at the right level. We're also going to run the engine full. Beautiful. We're going to run the engines to make sure that the system is kind of reset, make sure that, did Didn't miss anything, and that it's happy. I have a 5-hour charter tomorrow, so I don't want to be going out there without fully functional engines. Okay, so my boat is saltwater, and I have 6 of these Zincs around the boat. Around each engine, there's one there, there's 2 on the other side, and then there's 2 little guys that go down in here into the heat exchanger. They're down underneath. So, time to change those out next. So here is a new set on top and a 100-hour-old set on bottom, and as you can see, each of them wears in a little bit different amount depending on where they are around the engine. And that is how you complete the oil change on the Cummins 8.3 QSCs.